And good evening. Good evening. Just want to welcome everybody back to the Conversation 9-8. And I'm so super excited again for another episode, another week, another chance to sit down and have a great conversation with you. I hope all is well. And again, man, I'm excited. Make sure that you share this, let people know that you're in the building, and let me know where you're tuning in from. But tonight, man, I'm again excited for another chance to sit down and talk with my people, to sit down and have a conversation, because really that's what it's all about. But hey, I know football season is upon us, especially down south, and just want everybody to enjoy themselves, and I hope everybody is doing well uh, today. So I'm sharing this with a few people. Excuse me. And we're going to go ahead and get started like we always do. But again, man, let me know where you're tuning in from. Shout out to Howard University, HU, up in the DC area. I just want to, as y'all been kind of seeing, right? Been doing a little theme, right? Giving some love to HBCUs. So 2 weeks ago, I had the Alabama A&M University in Huntsville, Alabama. Then I had Tuskegee University. So this week I'm rocking Howard University. So shout out to Howard University. Shout out to them. My last share, and we about to get at it. So this week, man, back for episode 101. So last week we had the pleasure of celebrating the 100th episode of the Conversation 9-8. And with the 100th episode, reveal a new logo. So shout out to my man, Mike Ingram. We go way back to basic training. So shout out to him. He did the logo for me. He also done some other work for me. So, man, if you're looking for a man, reach out to me. I can connect you with him. If you're looking for some work being done as far as digital creativity. Also, too, want to shout out to Heather Willis and Vaughn. They was the two winners of the raffles that we gave out. And then shout out to Valencia Smith for sponsoring those gifts. So shout out to her. Hello, beautiful. Her brand and what she has going on. So I just wanted to get that out the way, give them a shout out, get a shout outs, and got my mom rocking with me up here in New York. Also, man, just let me know where you're tuning in from. Just comment. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And I do ask, right? Go to YouTube and you can find the Conversation 9-8 YouTube channel. This will be uploaded on there. Also, check out my Facebook page, the Conversation 9-8 on Facebook. Also, I got the Conversation 9-8 on Instagram and the Conversation _98 on TikTok. So go check me out on all those social media platforms. But tonight we're gonna get into the conversation. And the conversation tonight is the power of changing your perspective on things you cannot change or the things you can't change. And there's power in changing your perspective because this is the reality. The reality is that in life, there are going to be a lot of things in life that we have no control over, that we cannot change, that we can't do anything about. And the only person in life that you have complete control over is yourself. And one thing that I've learned is there's almost like a supernatural power that you can gain when you can master the art or mature enough to the point to where you can work towards changing your perspective on something instead of focusing on trying to change something. And that power is found when you learn that your perspective impacts how you react to something and not how something reacts to you. And that's what I really wanted to talk about. And if you really sit down and think about it, there is a power in that. There is a power. And we're going to really talk about a lot of things tonight in reference to understanding that power in that perspective. My sister Portia tuning in from Uniontown, Alabama. What's going on? Hey, also, too, if you're watching this, right, go to voteforportia.com, voteforportia.com and donate. She's running for state level office for District 23 in the great state of Alabama. She's running as a libertarian candidate. She's breaking barriers. Go and support her. Donate. It doesn't matter. $1.50, $2, $5. If you got it like that, hey, go ahead and donate $100,000 because guess what? It's about change with that. So I just want to give her a shout out, even though I don't like her. No, I'm joking, but that's my sister. Go and vote for Portia. Vote VOT, the number 4, Portia, PORTIH. TIA.com. So Portia, if you can put that in the comments so people can see it, I'll share a little bit later on. But getting back to what we was talking about, right? There's the power of changing your perspective on things you can't change, right? So many times in life, we're going to be faced with things that we have no control over. We're going to be faced with things that happen to us. We're going to be faced with some hardships. We're going to be faced with some unfavorable situations, some unfavorable circumstances. And we can find ourselves perpetually frustrated because what we start to try to do is we'll focus so much time, energy, and effort in trying to change the external thing instead of spending our power that we have as far as we're controlling us is changing our perspective on it, right? And when we talk about changing the perspective, that is not saying that you are ignoring what happened or ignoring the actual thing, the thing that you're facing, right? But what it does is it focuses in on you and your ability to control the things that you can control. And that is you, that is your outlook, that is your perspective on those things. And when we tap into that, that's when we really find our true power. That's when we find our true power. That's when we can really find out what we can control. And the thing that we can control is us. Why am I saying that? Because think about it, right? If we just seriously be honest with ourselves and start to examine some things, right? What we will find is this. We will find that many of the things that we waste a lot of time, energy, and effort on is stuff that no matter how much time, energy, effort, resources we put towards it, nothing is ever going to come from that. Nothing is ever going to change from that. Those people are going to stay the same. Those people are going to do what they do. Those people are going to have the same mindset. Those people are going to continue to operate how they operate. And you will continue to subject yourself to being frustrated because you're putting all of your time, energy, and effort to change them or to make sure that they change to how you want to. And in reality, there's nothing you can do about them. So stop investing your time, energy, and effort into them and turn around and put that same energy and effort into you and changing your perspective on things. And I promise you, you'll see a difference. You will see a difference. All right. So this is Portia, my sister. All right. She said, I am running for Alabama State Senate 23. I need your help and support. No donation is too big or too small. You can cash out $, vote for Portia, or go to you can go to that website that she have there. And also you can go to the voteforportia.com and it's a donate button on there. So you can go and do that. Just wanted to give her a shout out today. Hey, Miss Valeda, how you doing? Thank you again for your continued support. But like, and getting back to it, right? There is so much power in changing your perspective. You know, I've said this before, right? I said this before. It's easy to have an opinion about something that you don't have the responsibility for. And the reason why that it's easy to have that opinion is because you only have the perspective of your perspective, right? You don't have that perspective from a different position or the perspective of having that responsibility on you. And I use the example of my father, right? I can remember I used to be so upset with my dad because I felt like when I was growing up, I felt like my dad was just doing too darn much. I'm just being honest with you. And it used to frustrate me because he treated me differently than my sisters. And I was like, dang, man, why you ain't treat me the same? Why I worked to learn how to play piano and I'm playing piano for church. And then you still giving them allowance, but you stopped giving me allowance. And you start treating me different. If I borrow money from you, you expect me to pay you back. And I was getting frustrated. And I thought from my perspective, that wasn't fair. But what I didn't see from the perspective of my father, he was preparing me to be a man and take care of my home. And I called him in tears, thanking him later on. I called him in tears, thanking him when I was 21 years old and had gotten married and had the responsibility of taking care of a family. And everything that he was doing was preparing me for that moment. See, in that thing, right, there was power in me changing my perspective in that moment because my perspective was really from a selfish place, right? From a selfish place. And this is the thing, right? This is the thing. When we really be honest, if we really be honest with ourselves, what we realize is the power in changing your perspective is really a shift in you being self-focused, self-centered, because your perspective is only from how you're seeing something, right? And when you change your perspective, it gives you a different sight picture. It gives you a chance to see something from a different angle, or see something from somebody else's point of view. And when you learn to embrace that, right, and open your mind up to that, what you are able to do is you're able to not only acknowledge that, hey, you can be wrong in situations, but what it also does is it eliminates you being so frustrated, because you're really frustrated because you want that for yourself. You want things to be your way. You want things to come out how you want it. And life ain't about you. Really, life is not about you. And that's why a lot of times we so frustrated, because we want life to be about us. But it's not. Life is not about us all of the time. I'm not telling you not to consider yourself, not to think about yourself, not to provide for yourself, not to look out. That's not what I'm saying. But when you sit down and think about it, most of the things that you're frustrated about, most of the things that you find yourself just really irritated with, really, if we just take the time to look at it, those things are really rooted. They are rooted down into us not getting what we want. Period. It's rooted in us not getting what we want, us not getting our way, things not going how we want them to go. So now I'm upset and I'm mad, right? And that's why I said it's power in changing your perspective on things you can't change. You know, there is so much power. There's a lot of times where, and you can look at this, right? And I get people get upset, right? And I'm shout out to my mom. Shout out to my mom, Deborah Shepherd, aka Mama D. And I can remember growing up, right? I used to be so upset with my sister Portia. I used to be like, you know, Portia, you need to do this, because if you do this, this is the right thing to do, right? And my mom used to be like, Robert, you're only responsible for telling them. You're not responsible for making them do what you tell them, you know. And that's the same thing. A lot of times we are only responsible for offering, like, especially when we're dealing with our kids, and as our kids get older, you know, we're only responsible for offering advice. It's up to them to take it. Don't try to make that your responsibility. You getting mad, right? That perspective is, look, hey, they got to make their decision. They got to live with that. I'm only responsible for offering advice. And I'm offering advice from the perspective of been there, done that, right? Just from that perspective of, hey, I've been there, done that. I'm not trying to tell you like I'm better than you, but guess what? I've been down that road. So being on that road, that's why you can learn some things. And if we just really be honest, right? In the Bible, even the Bible, even the principles in the Bible teaches us, right, to learn from those that already went down that same road before. Why are we asking that? Because when we leverage those things, when we leverage those experiences, that's why in the Bible it said, older women teach the younger women how to be wives. Older men teach the younger men how to be husbands. The reason why it's telling us with that, because it acknowledges that at different points in our lives and through different experiences, our perspectives change. And in those perspectives, what they end up doing is it gives us, it helps. When you can leverage or tap into somebody that's been there, done that, it saves you from a lot of that heartache and pain of going through from the ignorance from the ignorance of our youth by not having those experiences. That's why it tells the older generation to teach the younger generations, right? Not bash them, but teach them. And that's what in the younger generations, what I want to offer, right, with that is, it's not that they're trying to control you, right? They're trying to save you. Most of the time, they're trying to save you from the same mistakes that they made. So those that truly care are trying to pour back into you. And that's changing the perspective, right? You know, that's changing that perspective of, dang, they think they know it all. Dang, they trying to control me. Like, even I'm gonna hit this from a young person perspective, right? I'm gonna hit this from a young person perspective. There may be a young person right now who's thinking to themselves that, dang, my parents are trying to control me. They're trying to orchestrate and do everything in my life, right? They don't want me to be happy, right? Everything that they're doing is against me, right? They always feel like they got to put their input in and tell me this and tell me that, right? I'm going to go out and I got my mind made up about how I'm going to do it, right? Nobody's arguing with you on that. But one thing I would say that what you're not realizing is you're looking at it from the perspective of where you're at right now. And that's a selfish perspective. You're not looking at it from the perspective of where they have been and they see you're going down that same road. So it's almost like you're arguing with them for giving you directions for traveling down a road or a path that you're going down. And they're trying to save you from wrecking the car or making those same mistakes that they did walking down that road. They're not trying to control you. They're just trying to save you the pain, save you the time, save you the years from lessons learned. You know, when they're telling you about and this is the perspective that really and talking about changing your perspective, right? On things you can't change, right? It's really about understanding, right? That getting to a space, and this is one of the thank you, God. One of the true powers in changing your perspective. One of the true powers in changing your perspective, right, is gaining an understanding that it is okay to change. It is okay to let your ego down. It is okay to acknowledge the fact that you don't know everything. It is okay to say, you know what, I can learn from somebody else's experiences and not have to go down those same hardships or suffer through those same experiences that they had. If I'm open to changing my mindset. That's why I love what it says in the Bible, and be transformed by the renewing, the ing, the continuation of your mind, right? Because our mind is where everything happens in life. Because guess what? Thoughts manifest in action. And our mind is the battleground. Our mind is the battleground. Our mindset is the battleground. That's why it is so much power in changing your perspective. Priscilla said, this is good. Thank you. True. And she said, that's that. Ms. Valeda Page Banks said, one thing that I've learned is changing my perspective as to my children. I felt as if they did as I told them, they would be fine, but some didn't listen. So when I realized that it's my job only to teach them, not make them. Then I felt a lot better when I understood. Yes, and that is a power in changing your perspective. And I like that fact because, you know, at the end of the day, even I'm speaking from a biblical perspective. The Bible don't say make your child do what you want them to do and they will be good. The Bible didn't say that, right? The Bible stated that train up a child in the way that they should go, and they would not forget. And I think so many times that perspective on I'm your parent, I'm responsible for you, you gonna do what I tell you to do, you gonna make the decision I want. And I understand the perspective of providing guidance. I got that. I'm not disputing that, right? But what I am saying is this, right? So many times what we end up doing is we try to force them to do what we want them to do instead of looking at it from the perspective they have to walk their life and they have to live their life. And our only job is to guide them and prepare them and teach them so that they can be prepared to walk this 4-letter word called life, walk the journey on this 4-letter word called life. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones that have to live through the consequences of their choices, not you. And so many people, so many kids, and so many adults are living life frustrated right now because they were forced to live a life dictated to them by their parents or dictated to them by somebody else who never really considered about preparing them to make the decisions to choose to live their own lives. And the sad thing is this, right? And in both situations, right, you can have two people in those situations that refuse to change their perspective. From the parents can be like, well, they're going to do what I tell them to do and not look at it from the other side. And the kids going to be like, they just overbearing and not look at it from the other side. And you will live a full life of just chaos and dysfunction because you refuse to say, you know what? No, I can do this better. I can change my perspective. I can gain an understanding. Yeah, it does. It does, Priscilla. It says teach and train, not control. My mom said, but some parents who want their kids to do what they say do are in their way trying to keep the kids from making hard mistakes. And I got that. In their way, you're trying to keep them from making hard mistakes. But that goes to what I said earlier. The power, right, in changing your perspective on things you can't change. There are some things you cannot change what your kids, a decision what other folks gonna make. You cannot change it. It doesn't matter what information you give them. It doesn't matter how you prepared them. It doesn't matter if you give them a cheat sheet, Cliff Notes. If you give them a how-to list, some people are still just going to make their own decisions. And the reality is you can't control that because guess what? They make their own decisions and they have to suffer the consequences of their decisions. So don't get so caught up in trying to stop them from making mistakes when in reality, you cannot change that. So LIG, let it go. Let it go. Like they said on that movie, let it go. Let it go, Frozen. You got to let that thing go. Let it go. Miss Valeda said, even when we take ourselves out of our friends' business, right, we will have a better relationship. If they accept your advice, fine. If not, move on and stop trying to control grown folks. You would definitely find better sleep. That is so true. And that's why I said this. I made a post on my page, right? I made a post on my page today. I'm gonna pull it up just so I can make sure I quote it correctly. Like they said, I quote it correctly. Come on. Now you want to be slow. Here we go. Post on my page is I said, now I don't want to pop up. That's how I do. I can pull it up on my phone. But the quote on my page is this, right? And yep, here you go. I said, that is not it. Why is it doing to me right now? Because I want to look it up. I don't want to misquote it, but I'm gonna get it. All right, here you go. There we go. All right, here we go, right? My apologies on that one. My apologies. But a quote I made on my page said, the quicker you accept that some will refuse to grow or change for the better, the less time you will waste, right? The less time you will waste worrying about what they're doing, or less time you will waste putting your resources, your time, energy, and effort in trying to help them, right? Because guess what? Some people don't change. And when I talk about the quicker you realize that, right? That is changing your perspective. That's changing your perspective. Say, you know what? Not going to waste my time, energy, and effort. So guess what I'm going to do? In this whole situation, I'm going to just say, you know what? I'm removing myself out of that. That's not my responsibility. That's not my role. I ain't got to deal with that. So by me moving myself out of that situation, now I'm gaining peace. I'm gaining time back, right? And I understand that it can be hard at times, right? But at the end of the day, that's not your responsibility. Because the only person you can control in this world is yourself. Is yourself. Priscilla said, and it's not just parents to children, it goes abroad. Like to family and loved ones as well. Anyone that try to help you. That is so true. And she also said, some people just simply don't want you to tell them anything. But like you said earlier, something that your mother said is your job to tell them. It's up to them to make and accept it. Yes. Now, what's going on, Chris? How you doing? Mayor Jones, I say, Mayor Jones. He said, but it's still hard for a parent to watch their kids go down the wrong path. It is. It is so hard it is so difficult for you as a parent to watch your kid go down a wrong path, right? But it's their path to walk, not yours. And I think what has helped me is looking at it from the perspective of this, right? That I took ownership of my decisions. Because, watch this, I took ownership of my decision. And when I made the decision not to go to class when I was first went to college, and I flunked out of school, I did that. My parents brought me up in a loving environment, a supportive environment. They brought me up in an environment where I was set up to excel, right? I had all of the tools with me. I had the tools, I had the abilities, I had the tools, I had the resources available to me for me to be successful. I chose not to take advantage of it, right? So in that moment, I felt like that wasn't my parents' responsibility to take on something that I didn't do. So that was my mindset. And with me and my kids, right, I've always looked at it from that perspective of I have a role to play. Wow, this is good. This right here is good. As parents, we have a role to play in our children's lives. We do have a role to play. We have responsibilities to care for them, to nurture them, to bring them up, to position them to be the best version or reach their potential, right? We have a role to play. But many times as parents, what happens is we forget that we only have a role to play, and we forget that our children have a life to live. And we forget that they have a life to live. And in that life, what we forget is that in our lives, there are many situations, circumstances, and decisions that we made that wasn't favorable. And we can want that what's best for our kids, but guess what? Our parents or others wanted what's best for us. And at the end, we still chose the decisions in our lives because it was our lives. And I thank God for that. Thank God for that. He dropped that one on. The lady said, Chris Jones, yes, you can only train them. You know, she was saying train them. But when we warn them and try to tell them, what's left to do is to pray. Yes, we can left to pray, but then also you can pray. But then at the end of the day, listen, that's on them. Because a lot of the things that we're talking about, with this, right, is most of the time the friction that we find most of the time the friction that we find between parents and children is really found in us wanting our kids not to suffer the way or make mistakes how we did it. But the conflict comes in is we have the perspective of experience. We have the point of view of that hardship. We have the point of view of going broke, making bad financial decisions, and you have to sit around and make a way and figure out how you're going to feed your kids, or figure out how you're going to do this, figure out how you're going to do that. So now, because you've learned from those hard mistakes, you're trying to tell your children or position your children to make better decisions. But what happens is they only have the perspective of where they're coming into their own, and they feel like that they got it together, and they confident in their abilities. That's why we just have to let them live, because guess what? Eventually, they're going to come back home. They're going to come back home. Think about the Bible. In the Bible with the story of the parable of the sons, right? And they said the youngest son went to the father and was like, hey, give me all what's owed to me, you know, like basically give me my inheritance and let me go out here and let me turn up. And he went out there and turned up. The Bible said he was out there living good, partying, living everything, and lost everything, right? And it's funny, right? The dad didn't argue with him. Even though the son was disrespectful, the son went to him basically said, you pretty much dead to me. Give me what I'm going to inherit when you die so I can go out and do my own thing. And this is what I really love about the story was, and that whole story, right? That whole story, and I hope this encouraged somebody tonight, but that whole story, the key point in that story was this, right? That's why when the Bible says you train a child up in the way that they should go, that he went and did his own thing. He had to gain experiences. He had to lose everything. He got down bad to the point to where they said that he was working, feeding the hogs. And he was so hungry where he considered eating slop, eating what the hogs were eating. That when he was at his lowest, the Bible said he came to himself and said, I'm more willing to go back home and not take my position as a son, but even be a servant, because the servants are treated better. And when he went back to the father didn't hit him up and be like, see, I told you, you shouldn't have went out and did that. And you did that and you lost everything, this, that, and the third. The father ran to him, open arms, hugged his neck. And the reason why the father did that is symbolic of God, right? God understands too. And as parents, sometimes we're going to have to let them kids go. We got to let them kids go. I'm telling you, we got to let them go. We got to let them go and trust God. And then the Bible said they came to himself. He remembered how it was in his father's house. Miss Page, the lady said, Chris Jones, they are part of us. And when they hurt, we hurt. Sometimes the wrong path will straighten them up. Priscilla said this. She said, I had one today that needed me for something. And as soon as they called, I showed up. And then it was said, I wanted to call you earlier this week, but I didn't want you to throw it up in my face. I said I would not have done that. It's only, I would not have done that. It's only to try to fix the problem now. Yeah, because guess what? I mean, yeah, even with that, right? And that's what I'm saying with perspective, right? And I'm glad you used that example, because in this perspective, what we're talking about, the power in changing your perspective, is you use that example that your child wanted to call you earlier, but their perspective of, they thought that, okay, you was going to throw it up in their face. They didn't want to be chastised. And their perspective is, oh, you chastising me. But your perspective is, I'm not chastising you. I don't want you to make the mistakes. And you see the power when we are able to see it from the other side. Now there's not a barrier that's up of offense, because now we gain an understanding. That's why the Bible said, and all that get understanding. Chris said, parents must continue to communicate with their kids, right? With their children, no matter what path the child takes. Yes. And I'll say this too, right? It's not just on the parents to communicate, but also the children. It is. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's two people. It takes two people to communicate. And showing your kids that you love them is not always telling them what they're doing wrong. You know, the whole thing with that is, you know, if your child chooses to do something wrong, you know, and if you don't want to listen to my advice, you know, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to, that bed, you made that bed, you're gonna lay in it. Because if you come to me for assistance, I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you know not so much what you did wrong. What I am gonna let you know is the fact that you made the decision to get to this point. But you know, that's just me. That's just how I look at it, right? But I do want to say this too. I want to shift this a little bit, right? You're talking about there's power, the power of changing your perspective, right? On things you can't change, right? So many times we as people feel like we can change somebody else. We feel like we know the tools, or we can bring out the potential in other people, or we can do this and we can do that. And we take that responsibility on to try to change other folks. And you can't. You can't. You can offer help. You can offer advice, right? But you can't change nobody else but yourself. You're the only person that can change you. You can't change your children. You can't change your husband. You can't change your wife. You can't change your spouse, your coworker. You can't change your friends. You cannot change them. But you can change your perspective. And by changing your perspective, most of the time it eliminates the impact of others, because you're looking at it from a different point of view. You're looking at it from a different point of view, right? And my mama said, at the same time, when we are hit with life, at the same time we're hit with life, we have to make a decision. We can be a victim or a victim. Yes, and I'm about to speak on that in a minute. Absolutely cannot. Yep. My mom said, a victim says, wow, look at what happened to me. Miss Valeda said, why do people get mad when people don't allow us to change them? Okay, I'm gonna address this, but I want to say this, right? I have to say this because this right here is so critical. The difference between being a victim and a victor is found in the perspective of the same individual. Why? A victim has a mindset that is looking to point blame at what happened to them, right? That is a victim mindset. A victor mindset is the perspective of, I acknowledge what happened to me, but I am not going to allow what happened to me to control me. So that's when I was talking about there's power in the ability to change your perspective on things you can't change. You cannot change what happened to you, but you can change how it impacts you. And that's where the true power is found. That right there is where the true power is found. Ms. Paige Banks said, why do we get mad when people don't allow us to change them? We get mad when people don't allow us to change them because in our mind, we have a mindset to say, hey, we're going to fix it. I can fix it. Think about it, for real. And listen, I'm just bringing up a point. I'm speaking in general, right? But think about this, right? A lot of women get mad at their husbands because they want them to be something that they want them to be. They want them to do things that they want them to do, and it's not them. I saw a video. This young lady was on TikTok, and she said she lost her husband. Basically, talk about her ex-husband because she was trying to make him something that she knew that he wasn't. And we feel like hey, they need to do this, and I want them to do this. Well, what do they want to do? What is their what I mean, really, what is their desires, right? And this is the thing with that, right? There's a difference into encouraging and trying to coerce. There's a difference between encouraging and trying to coerce, right? Because now that's when manipulation come in and all of that, right? That's why it's critical when you start talking about understanding, like, because watch this. Is this a fair question? The same, do the women that typically are on their spouses about doing things and doing things better or becoming better, do you get that same energy back from them? Right? Because most men will allow a woman to be herself and go and chase her dreams. Most men is not going to sit there and say, well, you need to do this and you need to do that, or try to change them from who they are. Typically speaking, there are some that do, but typically speaking. Now, when you look at it, right, whose perspective is wrong in that? Is it that, yeah, you can want better for them, you can see what they can accomplish, but realistically, do they really want to? And that's where it really boils down to. My mom said, we want to save them, and we are upset because they don't want us to save them. That is true. Chris said, the saying is, nobody can change me but me. That is a fact. That right there is a fact for anybody. For anybody. And even on a faith-based perspective, right? That is a personal decision that you make to align yourself. But nobody can change you but you. Other people can help you on your journey, but you have to make that decision to change. But she said, but I saw the potential, but we have to let a person be who they are, because at the end of the day, but at the end of the real me, you, her, or him will come out. That is so true. But also watch this, right? You saw at the many times we see things in others. We see the potential in others. We see the potential in others, or we see what others may be capable of doing, but we're looking at it from the perspective of how it can benefit us, not from the perspective of what they really want to do. And you have to think about that. What are they motivated by? What are those things, right? And so many times we have ideas in our heads of what we want others to be, that we find ourselves frustrated because we're trying to change them into something that they weren't even created to be. But we try to change them to be that because it benefits what our idea that we have in our head. and it benefits that idea. So we push for that idea, but that idea is self-serving and not centered around serving them. And that's something that's the truth. And that's something that we have to look at. And we start, and I'm talking about start to peel back the onions on some things, right? We start to see, that's why I'm going back to sticking with the power of changing your perspective on things you can't change, right? I would tell you one, and I've said it on the show before, but one of my greatest lessons as a parent is I had to realize that even though me and my son have similar experiences, our realities are different. And so so the thing is, even though you can have similar experiences to other people, you have to acknowledge that your realities are different. And with your realities being different, right, there are going to be different perspectives. Because guess what? There are not two people that are the same. Even if you're identical twins and share the same DNA, you are two different people. You have two different souls, two different desires, two different likes, so many different preferences, right? And so a lot of times what happens is we get caught up into our perspective because our perspective is controlled by our preferences. And in those preferences, we want things to align to our preference. And what happens is we get into an argument of a us versus them, and it's not a us versus them. We just have two different perspectives. And if we can come to the point of seeing it from those two different perspectives, what we'll find is that neither one was wrong. We just have different perspective or different preferences. That's really what we'll find out. And we'll realize that a lot of the things that we're stressing out, and we got high blood pressure, and we're dealing with all of this stuff, and we're trying to control and change others, we'll realize, like, dang, it's really not that serious. That's why I love when the Bible talk to old. Because see, when you talk to the old mothers, and I'm talking about the young, like if you're a young mother, young wife, right? And you trying to figure things out, you frustrated with your husband, you frustrated about this, that, and the third with your kids. And if you talk to them folks that been down there, like you can see it, right? You have a newborn baby. Them old aunties, them grandmamas, the ladies, they gonna show you how to take care of that baby. They can tell you, oh no, only thing you gotta do is do this. Pat them on the back right here, rub them right here. No, that car right there, no, he hungry. That baby hungry. No, you know what? That baby's sleeping. Because they didn't dealt with that. They didn't sit down and sit through those days where that baby was just hollering, and they trying to figure out what's going on, and they trying to, they want to pull their hair out. They didn't been through that. They didn't been through those days with their husband and their kids, and they can tell you certain key things to save you from going down that road. You just got to be open and receptive to receiving. Those old men can tell you, I used to hear my daddy say this all the time. And it wasn't until I got older and got married that I understood what my daddy was saying. My daddy used to be like, there your mama go. And he'll just say it like that. And I'm sitting here like, what is dad talking about? But when I got married, I fully understood what my daddy was talking about. And he was just saying, there she go, right? There she go. Priscilla, she said, transparent moment. I pushed my ex-husband to be what I wanted him to be. And yes, just like you said, it would have benefited me. Did not look at it like that until you just said it. Thank you, Robert. At the end of the marriage, I realized that him trying to be who I wanted him to be made him miserable. So when he started to be himself, I was miserable. Thank you for helping me look at it from another perspective. Wow, to God be the glory. To God be the glory. Thank you for being transparent. Realistically, that's why I try to be on this show. This is not something about trying to tell people, like try to talk like you got it all together. No, I don't. But this is right. That right there is the why behind it. And the key is, right, it's so many relationships that can be healed by seeing it from a different perspective. And just saying, you know what? I'm sorry. I saw this post a while ago, and they said, children, you have to realize that when your parents were parenting, that was their first time being a parent. and they make a lot of mistakes. And a lot of times you don't realize the mistakes that, until you become a parent, and you have a sense of apathy or empathy. I'm sorry, not apathy, but you'll be more empathetic towards parents because you make mistakes. Man, I make mistakes all of the time, right? But I'm open to having those conversations and say, you know what, I apologize for that. There's certain things I stand on. There's certain principles I stand on, right? I don't have to apologize for those principles, but I can apologize for how that made them feel in that moment. But hey, Priscilla, thank you so much for sharing that. And my prayer is that that's healing continue to go on. That not only that healing's there, that can close, that healing can continue to be a fertile ground to grow and go on to to the next level that God has for you. And realistically, right, this conversation, this platform is really about healing. And it really took me about 9-8 months to really get into, like, this is really centered around healing, centered around life experience, centered around things that we have, and have a serious conversation about these things so that we can work towards healing those relationships, healing that broken heart, healing all of those things that bother us and connect us to life, healing that so that we can walk in the abundance of life that God created us to walk in, right? And that right there is so key because, like Priscilla just said, and Lord knows healing is needed, right? There's so many people walking around here walking wounded, and they got their guards up and they're tired. I mean, they are tired. Their souls are tired. They're sitting around and they're like, man, I am wore out. I'm tired, but I got to put on this front. I got to be strong. I can't let nobody know that I'm hurting on the inside. I can't let nobody know that I'm emotionally numb. I can't let nobody know that I want to give up. I want to throw in the towel. I can't let nobody know that I have been dealing with suicide. I can't let nobody know that I'm overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I got an anxiety. I'm having an anxiety attack by basic things. I can't let anybody know that behind this smile, I am crying. I am screaming. I can't let anybody know, but you can. You can. And it's time to choose to heal. It's time to choose to heal. Choosing to heal is making the decision to choose to heal is one of the scariest things that, if you're really wounded, that's one of the most scariest things to overcome. But the reason why it's scary is because the enemy try to convince you that by you giving up control, nobody's going to make sure that it's going to be done right. And I promise you, that is the complete opposite. That's why in the scripture said, cast your cares upon the Lord, right? That's why you hear all the time it said, take it to the cross. That's why Jesus died on the cross for us, to take our burdens to him, to take those burdens to him, to lay it at the cross, to say, you know what, I'm going to trust you with this because by me carrying this, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed. And you know what, God, I trust you with this. Because my way ain't been working. I done tried it this way. I done tried this. I done tried that. I done tried this. I done tried that. And that's why I like in the scripture when we talk about the women that touched the hem of the God's garment, right? That said that woman had an issue of blood and she exhausted all of her resources. She exhausted all of her resources. She exhausted everything. She went to all of the doctors. She went around, traveled around, went to all the doctors, went to all of these different people, and got down to she didn't have anything. And she heard that Jesus was coming. And she fought through a crowd to say, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. And that's symbolic of getting to a space where you done eliminated everything that you had, right? And you just said, if I could just touch, if I could just trust, if I could just try, if I could just lay it down, I would be all right. Oh my God. Priscilla said, I've learned so much since the divorce. I've learned the areas I need to work on. But this one thing I know, I will be ready for love when it presents itself again. Man, look, and listen, I would tell you that right there is so much, man. Like we attempt so much. We attempt so much to mask our pain because we don't want others to know that we're hurting. But the reality is they see us hurting anyway because they see it manifested in the decisions in our lives. And the truth is, as soon as we get the courage to face our pain, that's when we'll start to see the fullness of the manifestation of healing happen in our lives. And most of it is about changing our mindset. Because most of the time, the healing is not about changing somebody else or changing. Most of the time, when God delivers you from something, he delivers your mind. Don't really change the situation and circumstances so much, but he delivers your mind. He takes those desires away. You know, I know people that had addictions and he took that desire away from them. That's a change of perspective. But he also forced them to deal with those triggers that forced them to be in that position before. And that's what I'm thankful for. But tonight, man, I'm so grateful for this show. Show was a great show, phenomenal show. Again, man, go and like the Conversation 98. Go to YouTube and subscribe, right? Subscribe and rock with your boy. Rock with your boy. The whole goal for everything is if it can reach one, it did its job. So I thank you guys for rocking with me tonight. Love you guys so much. Look forward to continue this. Ms. Paige Banks said, when you get an understanding of any situation, we can deal with it better. Yes. And that's what it's really about. It's about getting understanding. And most time, understanding comes in a perspective. Because if I don't see your perspective, I can never gain an understanding of how you see it. But if I take time to see it through your perspective, I may not agree, but I understand. And that right there is key. That right there is key. Because the Bible said, in all that get understanding. And it said, in all that get agreement. It said, in all that get understanding. Right? And I hope you guys have a great and phenomenal rest of this week and going into next week. And I pray blessings over everybody. And thank you guys so much for rocking with me. To God be the glory. See you guys later. God bless.